Hi, I'm Dave. This is the Cyderbaby pod, and today I've got the legend that is Dave Hill from Demon. Hello.
Hello, Dave. How are you doing?
I'm well. You're looking really well. Positively glowing, sir.
Yeah, I've just been for a walk outside. It's quite a nice day, and I've had a wash and a shave, so it's yeah. I go cycling quite a bit and do quite a bit of walking and stuff. So just at the moment, I've got a slight hearing problem, but I think that's come with 40 odd years of rock and roll. But I'm okay.
Okay. Demon, they've been a part of my life for a long, long time. I mean, I don't want to put an age to it. I mean, yeah, but
40 something years now. Yeah.
yeah. Um, just tell me, let's go over it. I mean, Night of the Demon was such a classic album and such a brilliant debut album. I mean, how did that all come about? Just tell me the start of Demon.
Well, really, obviously, as I say, what 1980
Mm,
or even late 79. And Mal Spooner, the late Mal Spooner, who I'd worked with, we formed Demon. I think it was just prior to the new wave of what they started to name the new wave of British heavy metal.
yeah,
And we'd written some songs, and I think the very first one we did was Liar. And we formed Demon, and there was a guy called Mike Stone who's still with us, who still manages the band.
right.
And he had a company called, what were they called now? I can't think, the early stuff. Little punk label in Stoke. And I got talking to him one day, and he sort of said, he came from London, came to live in Stoke-on-Trent, and opened this shop. And he started chatting to him, and he said, "Well, have you recorded anything recently?" Which has Demon, we hadn't.
Hmm.
So anyway, long story short, we went into the studio and did a couple of tracks. One which was a Liar. Track was released on a red vinyl, and there was all different sort of charts around in those days in
Yeah.
sounds and places. And I seem to remember, I think it was the Bailey brothers, DJs, they used to do a chart, and they put Liar in there. And so really that was the start. And we were gigging, as I say, and we decided to do an album. Obviously the name was Demon.
Yeah.
So I think the obvious one to use as a title was Night of the Demon from the famous film.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, it's such a classic album. Did you think it would be as big as it is back then?
No, I mean, I honestly thought, because I tell the tale quite regularly. I mean, obviously, I was playing and I was involved in a record shop with Mal.
Mm,
And when we realized, we were going to do an album, we actually sat in the back of a shop in Stoke. And in about 10 minutes, we wrote Night of the Demon and the song.
yeah.
And if anyone had told me 5 years later, or even 2 years later, anyone had remembered the song, I would have laughed. I mean, we were just living in the time. We were writing songs, we were playing in bands. We were 40 years younger, and we were enjoying ourselves. And but funny enough, I mean, I don't think there's ever been a live gig ever since that early album that we've not played Night of the Demon. It's just become, along with things like Don't Break the Circle and,
Mm,
the things are remembered. But no, I never thought that, I just thought maybe next year nobody'd ever hear of us. And it's only in looking back when you're asking and people ask, you say, yeah, well, we were playing here, there and everywhere, sat in the back of a shop, knocked some songs out, and on we went and recorded the album. I think when I realised we'd recorded the album, I think we went up to somewhere in Manchester where we put some backing tracks down, and then obviously we got a deal with Carrere because Mike Stone and his company said, well, Carrere are interested. Carrere had got bands like Saxon Roaster 2, those sort of bands, and they signed our album, and it was mixed down at the studio in London. And basically, I think that the company Carrera signed a few bands, and they were betting or backing some of the other bands. And obviously, I think with Night of the Demon and Demon, they picked the album up and they just threw it against the wall. I think what made the difference, it was called Night of the Demon, so obviously the company Carrera went to an artist in London and asked him about a cover. And I think the most startling thing I realised is I had no idea what the cover was going to be. And I got a call from Mike Stone. Play Records, that was his company with Discharge GBH, where he backed us and gave us the chance to record. And obviously then passed it on to Carrera. He rang me up and he said, I've had the cover for the album. I said, oh, okay, right. And I'll never forget walking up the street, and it was obviously vinyl then, which is what vinyl is now. And the window was full, when you put vinyl on a string in a window in a record shop. I looked from the other side of the road and I said, good God, what's this? And I saw hands in the grave. It reminded me a bit of the film Carrie.
Yeah.
And I just stared at it and I got a cold shiver down my back and I thought, Christ. And it said Demon over the top. And I thought, wow, we're Demon. We better get on with it. It was a stark realization. And I think the cover did an amazing amount, because I think it has featured in various countries as, one of the very early sort of the new wave period of a cover that, it was rated as one of the originals. Obviously, after the Sabbath period and bands like that, we came along, and the cover has appeared in various books and places. So I think that was a big sort of big thing with it. But I think the album, it just worked. Everything was right. Carrera threw it against the wall, and then we started getting sales figures. I mean, it wasn't. It wasn't selling by the millions or anything, but I mean, they rang up and said, you've done so many today, so many. I think they were more shocked than us. It started, then it was released in France and Germany and places like that. And it's become a sort of classic album, I suppose, like The Unexpected Guest as well, which was the follow-up. But I mean, that was the start. But as I say, from sitting in the back of a shop with a cup of coffee on a morning and just banging these tracks out. I mean, virtually, if you think about it, I mean, the pop tracks.
Yeah.
I mean, Night of the Demon is a pop song. You can break it down and put a disco beat to it, and I'm surprised nobody has. Just commercial stuff. And I'd worked with Mal for quite a few years, writing for record companies and playing in bands. And so I think the great thing about the album, it's a simplicity and straight to the point and a great cover.
Yeah.
And like I say, suddenly we had to get on the, I got a latex suit. I thought, I'm going to have to, somebody suggested you're going to have to do something. You call Demon, you've got Rise at the beginning. And so you better do something. So we actually got a latex suit designed by someone in London. And off we went on the first tour, and I was coming out of Graves and this, that, and the other. And once again, as I say, looking back, I mean, it was not planned. I mean, we were a do-it-yourself band. We weren't Kiss. We hadn't got millions of pounds. I mean, I'd spend an hour and a half in a little pub somewhere up on the Yorkshire Dales, putting the stuff on and, getting the head ready and getting out on stage and to reasonably small audiences when, I mean, it did catch on, but I mean, it was, I don't know how the hell we did it, because as I say, it wasn't, we weren't traveling around in limousines or anything. It was a homemade backstreet idea. And to a certain degree, it caught on.
You mentioned Unexpected Guest. I mean, that's a album in very much the same vein. But The Plague, the follow-up, it's quite a different album, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we've we've just reissued The Plague. It's quite funny because I've started to do interviews again. We've remixed it, which I'm incredibly pleased with it, and it is regarded, funny enough, by what's the paper? Not Record Mirror, the paper that's been around for years.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's regarded in there as a classic. They
Okay.
just say, I mean, they reviewed it again recently and said that, you know, after all these years, I mean, obviously it's regarded within the business, you know, as a classic. But I mean, we changed because, in fact, I've been writing about that also. The reason we did, I'll say it very briefly, I'll just be on here all day, is we did the Night of the Demon, then we did the Unexpected Guest, and we did a small tour of Britain. And we ended up down at Carrera office in London after 14 dates. And all the press were in there, and you name it. And we did interviews in this hotel in London with Carrera, who were telling the press that we were #1 in Japan. We weren't, of course, you know, because that was the way the business works. I'm not knocking Carrera or anything. One thing we should have had was a manager. We didn't even have a manager. We were just guys on the street doing this. And what happened? I mean, we done the tour, which was great. I mean, it did sell out. It was marquee type gigs. And did 2 nights at the Marquee, they sold out. And I was doing all the suits. And as I say, we ended up in this hotel, and I was listening, and the band were all how great we were doing everywhere, and which I didn't know anything about. And when we eventually got back home, after about a week, nobody contacted us except Mike Stoners, and said, "What's going on?" I said, "Well, I don't know. It's, like I say, we should have had a manager." So, long story short, after a couple of weeks, after all this and all that, we were told by Carrera anyway at the time that they were going to get us on the, I think it was the Gillen European and British tour.
Okay, yeah.
It didn't come off. Another band, which I won't mention, that they got it. But I honestly think at that time, had we gone to Germany and places with the album doing well, and me and the Latex, the timing would have been absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
Because it took 30 years later that I had to do it quite recently in Germany and Sweden. They'd never seen it, they wanted it. So obviously you go back and you start doing these things for them. I think the timing, I'm not blaming anyone, it's just a fact. We hadn't got a manager. Some other bands did the big tours. So basically, Mal and myself found ourselves signing on. I mean, I've got children, married.
Yeah.
So did Mal. So it was a trip down to the local exchange, the Dole. Signed on. Of course, it was a big laugh in there because, "Oh, you're rock and roll stars, are you? What are you doing in here? You've just been in the charts, lower end." I said, "Look, it doesn't work like that." I said, so anyway, when we came out, next door was the library.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to Mal, I said, "We've just done this tour. We've just been told this. And we charted. And then you are led to believe when you're growing up, I think we're on our way here, you know." And, but obviously we haven't got a penny out of it. It was that's the business. So we went into the to the library next door. And I remember saying to Mal, I said, "You know," I said, "it feels like there's a plague going on out there." I said, "We've done this, we've done that." And so anyway, we decided, look, Samuel Pepys up 1660 something to play some bit of a reference. He lived on the posh side of the Thames, and he was saying, "I believe there's some sort of something going on the other side." I mean, hundreds of thousands were dying. Anyway, a few days later, we got together and we wrote the play only in a modern way, not 1665 or 13. And we sat down, and within about 10 days, we wrote it. We weren't intending to put the album out or to do anything. I think we were a little bit naive to the business. We were a bit, where are we going? What we're going to do? So we wrote The Plague. We looked at the things that were going on in those days, which some of the reviews we just had say, well, it's very similar to what's going on now, you know, sort of Lebanon, there was a war and there was a plague, there was unemployment, this, that, and the other. It was quite political. So basically, we did the album. Carrere didn't want it. We were in the period where Michael Jackson, he made an album, a great artist, but he needed 7 hit singles on the album. So we did a rough of The Plague, sent it down. They said, well, where are all these singles? I said, well, there isn't any. He said, well, we don't want it. So Mike stepped in and he said, let's go and book the studio and let's do The Plague. I mean, he's always been like that anyway. I said, you've not heard it. Don't care. He says, I believe you'll do a good album. Anyway, we did the album. We ended up mixing it, Mike did, down at Sarm, with a guy at the time called Julian Mendelssohn, he did Kate Bush, one or two others, and we were quite fortunate. That was being at the right place in the right time, so we mixed it. When I got a copy of it, I found it quite unbelievable because all the effects of the day, the studio effects, and the music papers. I mean, we actually got on the front of Sounds. There was 2 halves of Sounds one week, and I was in the bowler hat, and there was something else, and it went on about it being a classic and this, that, and the other. I thought, wow, we've got a dark side of the moon here. What's going on? What's happening? And then we got a deal in America on Atlantic. It's still one of my pride and joy. I've got an Atlantic Records on my wall at home, and well, that was another story anyway. But that's how The Plague came about. I mean, I think on reflection, we'd have probably been better. Because I remember a few months later speaking to Saxon's manager, it was managing at the time, and I played him the album. He says, you don't want to release that, The Plague. He says, write another Unexpected Guest, then we'll see what we can do. He was probably right. And I said, well, I've never been the one to say, well, why should we? If you like the Unexpected Guest, I mean, it's not so millions. It still sells with the first 3. You know, if people want it, let them go out and get it. Why should we make the same album again? Which was the way I always was. We've never made the same album. But I think in reflection, if someone had got hold of us and said, basically, do another album, it's going well here, let's get you on these tours. I mean, they're all going out and doing tours. Obviously, Saxon were, you know, successful, very successful. Rose to 2. And I bump into them all now at festivals abroad and that. And we have a chat about career days and that. But, you know, with hindsight, I think, I mean, it's one of my pride and joy, The Plague. And we've remixed it. And there might be something going on with The Plague, actually, some sort of network. Maybe turning it into, I don't know, it's just a rumor that, and someone's come on. So I thought, oh, well, if that comes off, then it was worth doing. But the reason we did it is just because we got mad. We got no money, signed on. And as writers, we wrote it, not intending it to come out, but it came out. And, you know, and that was The Plague.
Yeah. It's a fantastic album. I shouldn't really say it, but I sold all my vinyl a few years ago, and I was replacing everything with CD because basically being a DJ as well, I needed like the file copies of the songs rather than the vinyl, and my Demon vinyl went crazy on eBay. It just literally, I was just so blown away, and everybody was after The Plague. It's so mind-blowing. I mean, the people messages I had after said, oh, I wish I bid more for that. And I thought, well, it made silly money as it was. And, you know, it's just people were crying out for this kind of album. And even today, you know, like you say, 30, 40 years on. And there is still a relevance, like you said, today as well. And I think that's at the back of people's minds. I mean, from my mind, I think you did the right thing moving away from like the Crowley-esque writing of the first two
Yeah.
albums, and you change and you kept evolving as you went through your career. I mean, British Standard Approved is such a great album. And then going later on, Breakout as well, and Space Like Monkey is one of my favorite albums of yours.
Yeah, we've said, me and Mike, I mean, it's going to be sometimes with Demon, things are not instant. And you just brought the plague up, which let me just quickly say about the plague. I mean, next month we're on a ship that's going around. We've done it before, Sweden. Rush ballads on and people like that, and it goes on for about 10 hours. And we've got to play the plague. That's what's happening. We're booked to play the plague. But last year, all this started again with the plague because there's a guy in Norway, can't think of his name, lovely chap, bit of an eccentric, owns a huge piece of land, and he's a big prog fan.
Yeah.
So he got all these prog bands booked, and he rang us up. He said, "I want to book Demon." So I had a look at his bill, you know, because I used to like prog rock anyway, and you know, loads of the old prog bands were on. You know, everybody but Camel. I used to like Camel. I got a few albums, but they were rumored, they weren't on. So I actually said to the guy, I said, "Hold on, I mean, you know, we're Demon." And I said, "Why have you booked us?" And he said, "Well, when I was growing up," he said, "my brother introduced me to that album." And he says, "I'll tell you why I booked you." He said, "I think it's the best prog rock album ever made by a rock band." And I said, "Fair enough, Lucas." So we went there, and all the prog bands were on, and it wasn't like a normal Demon gig because you can guarantee. And I thought, this isn't going to work, you know. And it was in his garden, so it was a bit like royalty. Says, "You'll be fine." And we came on all of a sudden out the blue. Out they came with the Demon t-shirts, and I was quite relieved. I thought, "Oh, right, we've got a crowd." And it was virtually a standing ovation when we got to the end, and so many people just said, "Wow." So there tends to be a little bit of a, because we've gone through 4 or 5 years of doing that, Night of the Demon and the Unexpected Guest throughout Europe and everywhere. So now it was obviously time for the plague, but there is an amazing amount of interest in getting it out there and playing that album. So, but I mean, like I've just said earlier, I think that sometimes it takes a long time for the penny to drop with some of the Demon product. And both me and Mike, now we're getting on, say to me, "Well," he said, "for years, they're going to recognise what we've done when we're dead." So I said, "Well, yeah. Better make sure my family have got everything sorted." But no, we've always said it's not an instant thing with Demon. You know, you mentioned the Unexpected Guest, which so many people tend to come up about that, and I mean, it might get remixed and all. But anyway, I'm rabbiting on again. So
No, that's absolutely fine. I'm listening away. Don't worry. Okay, there were like a raft of albums up to I suppose like the early 90s, then your first split. But how did you survive Mal passing on? I mean, that could have been quite hard for any band.
yeah, I mean, yeah, it was. I mean, it was the strange period also. I mean, I'd known Mal since I was in my teens playing in bands, and but he'd never been a well person. Apparently, when he was young, he had a bad bout of pneumonia, and sort of only one of his lungs. It was a different time and place years ago. Only one of them worked particularly well, so he was always on medication and stuff. And I mean, I'd always worked with him, so I never really realised, you know, you don't when you're in your 20s and that. Always bad type of thing, and you know that's just the way it was. And so I suppose he always said the rock and roll lifestyle would probably suit him more if he lived in a hot country and a nice place, and just did a few gigs now and then. But I didn't realise. I mean, he'd always been ill, but obviously, you know, it just sort of happened. I mean, he became very ill. We were doing British Standard. In fact, we nearly finished British Standard, and and we were good at in Strawberry Studio in Stockport, and one of the days when we were finishing off, I went to pick him up, and his wife said, he says, not well at all. And I spoke to him. He said, look, go up there. He said, I said, we haven't finished the lyrics on British Standard, which I never did them on my own ever. Because we always sat on the table, me and Val, he was a stickler. And he always, I've learnt this forever. I used to sit there and I'd sit here and I'd look at him and we'd be working on lyrics. And I knew when it wasn't right, he'd say, we'll get it right tomorrow. And, you know, I used to dig deep. And obviously we did them all between us. And the last time I saw him was when I went to his house and I said, we've got to finish the lyrics. And I knew he was ill because he said, you'll sort them. And I thought, Christ, no, I won't. But anyway, I mean, like I say, eventually for all the years he'd had the complaint, I mean, it finished him, and which was incredibly sad. And when we went into to mix British Standard, we went into Amazon in Liverpool. I'd not even finished some of the lyrics. And in fact, I hadn't even done some of the vocals. And I think what it did, I suddenly realized I just dug in. And I started to, even though Night of the Demon lyrics and that were right up my street, you know, I could, you know, as long as it's not about love and this, that, and the other, because everybody writes so many good love songs, I could write that. And I came to do British Standard, and I thought, I remember Mike saying to me, he said, where's the vocals on this track? I said, there isn't one, which was strange. He says, well, can't you go in there and put something down? I said, well, yeah. But what it made me do, I suddenly realized Mal was always, he always still is, sits across from me. And I tend to look at him when I'm working on a song, and I can hear him say, you'll get it right. Or so, I mean, basically, as terrible as it was, obviously, I mean, I grew up from that point on realizing how you do it. You know, we made a decision whether to just call it a day at that time, because also the guitar player Les, he'd left because he was contracted to somebody else, and we did British Standard, and it was a strange time. And so I sort of had to make a decision. Mike said, well, what are you going to do? You're going to go on? Or, and I thought, something told me inside. I said, no, we're going on. I said, you know, it's easy to pack it in, find a new name and start again. But we'd already started on a journey because the new wave of British heavy metal ended quite quick. That's why we did The Plague as well, and albums like that. We wanted to move on. We never, you know, I mean, I was always a big fan of Floyd and Bowie and that. And they never made the albums twice. And of course, the Beatles and people. There was always, you know, I mean, I remember buying Dark Side of the Moon, and the next album was Wish You Were Here, which is a stunning album, but it's totally different. And for me, I wanted to be involved in things like that. And, you know, maybe it's wrong at times, but I just found out after that, I thought, right, let's move on. We had to get, obviously, new people in the band, and we made a decision to go on. And I think round about that period, 64, 5, when everything was happening in Britain with Bon Jovi, the American bands, which were great. And then the thrash, Metallica's came in and that. And it was probably, if you were a British rock band from the new wave of British heavy metal, unless you were Saxon and Iron Maiden who'd gone on, it was a pretty awful time to be in Britain, to be in a new wave of British heavy metal bands, because the scene had died. Fortunately, I mean, like I said earlier, we'd had some successes, quite well known in Germany, Holland, all of Europe, but we'd never been. So we got ourselves a small tour, and we worked hard for quite a few years. And I think that saved the band. We dug in, people knew of us. You know, we still haven't got Kiss money or major companies. And the American thing only lasted for one album with The Plague. The reason being, is the guy who signed us left the company in
Right.
America,
Yeah.
and even though it did quite well in some places, and they were on a high, America were at that point. It was, oh, we don't want to hear about bad times and people unemployed and everything. We want, you know, Ronald Reagan was in, Michael Jackson was singing his pop songs, and it was just a great time in America. So the last thing you wanted is an album about the plague. So basically, even though we did get a bit of money out of that album, but they didn't continue or pick up on the next one. So, as I say, we decided there was a call from Germany from a promoter, and he said, "I'd like to book you some dates." And I don't think we ever looked back. You know, we worked hard. Europe's a great territory if they understand honesty. You can go out there with the worst sounding gear and everything else under the sun, and not a big finance, but they can always tell if it's, you know, if it's from here. And I mean, we worked quite tirelessly, and then I think that we did Breakout at the time, which got good reviews.
Hi, I'm back with Dave Hill of Demon here. Thank you, Dave. We seem to be hitting technical problems, but we're there now, I think.
Yeah, well, I'm an old dinosaur, unfortunately. So
Yeah, you and me
I mean,
both.
you must be running out of patience.
No.
I think we're okay now.
Yeah.
I've got a technical person in the house anyway as well.
Yeah, no worries. It actually breaks the interview up quite nicely because you know, we've got up to well, basically the European side of things with Demon now, and Breakout. So
Yeah, I mean, obviously after the first album back, after obviously we lost group members and everything, we did Heart of Our Time, which was a little bit experimental.
yeah,
That was after British Standard Improvement. Obviously, we'd lost Mal and the guitar player, and you know, we'd had the plague in America, but that was short-lived. So we got back on the road. We were doing Europe, which really made a difference for us, because people knew who we were. We'd heard that, and but never really been there. So we consistently went. We then did Breakout, which was, I think, the start of the second phase for us, and it was really well. It was really well received, and
yes.
did a couple of deals in Europe, and I think we did. I mean, the point is, all the way along, we tended to do deals in Japan, even though we'd never been there. We quite well known, but anyway, that's where we were, and then we did Taking the World by Storm, which really sort of seemed to turn it round again. You know, we were back to perhaps Plague and British Stand, and then a couple of albums in between, which we were getting ourselves back in, new writers involved,
Yeah.
new writer with me. So Taking the World by Storm was really, really well received.
So you were touring UK obviously at the time, and you were obviously touring Europe as well. Was this just getting to a point where you needed a break, or?
I mean, obviously we did have a break, which, I mean, I think it was about 92 when we did take a break. But I mean, obviously we'd been on the road from late 70s, early 80s, consistently changing ourselves because we wanted to never do the same album twice. We wanted to move on. We wanted to not always be associated with the new wave of British heavy metal. I mean, yeah, I'm quite pleased about that these days. But what seemed to happen after the new wave of British heavy metal, I mean, I've got a book with all the bands in, and there was hundreds of bands. I mean, I don't remember them all, but I mean, basically 90% of them packed in.
Yeah.
After that, you know, which was obvious because of the American invasion. I mean, they've been sort of reformed and one thing and another, quite regular abroad, because there's always been an interest in that period. But we just got our heads down, soldiered on, and I mean, Taking the World by Storm, Hold On to the Dream, We did an album Blowout. I think that was 92, 93.
Yeah.
And we decided basically just have a bit of a break because it was, we'd been doing those things for such a long time.
Yeah. Well, you came back with quite a bang in 2001 with Spaced Out Monkey.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, I mean, in between also in the company we were with, Semaphore, in Germany, which we'd been with on those previous 3 albums. They asked me, which I didn't really want to do. I'm not a solo artist, but I mean, they asked me about, they got any material, do you fancy doing an album? Of which, Welcome to the Real World, which we did. I mean, it did okay. And in 2014, Mike and myself went in and remixed it because we were never quite happy with the cover and the original. So we put it out again, and it ticks along nicely. It's as I say, I mean, I wasn't going to do it, but somebody said, "Well, why the studio's available?" So in '94, I went in and did it. But obviously, then Spaced Out Monkey, yeah, which was our return. I mean, we had started playing. You know, we were back 97, 98, doing Bang Your Head in Germany and one thing and another. And then in 2001, I think the difference it made for us that really changed things for Demon was the internet.
Yes.
I mean, suddenly, I mean, I knew we'd had a couple of successes in Sweden. We'd been in the top 30 with The Guest and the Plague.
Yeah.
And there'd always been a following because I used to get statements and payments, but we'd never been. And we put Spaced Out Monkey out with a Swedish company. We went to Sweden, Sweden Rock in 2001, and it was absolutely amazing. It's like the prodigal sons had returned. I mean, I'd never been to Sweden, but I mean, there was everybody singing every song to 10,000 people, you know, first thing in the morning in Sweden. And at that time, it was probably the lowest or just previous. It was still hard work in Britain.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then we went to Sweden and we signed to this company, and then we did Spaced Out Monkey. And I mean, I really like Space. I think there's some really good tracks. I mean, it wasn't an instant album because once again, I think you have to listen to Demon albums because obviously they're written, you know, with different subjects and a lot of feel in them. And I still listen to stuff now. I mean, one of my favorites is what's the track? Trying to think. I'll think of it in a minute, but there's quite a few tracks. Let Me Out of Here, I like. I think that's off their album. No, it's not. It's off the following one. But there's some tracks I really like on the album. But basically, I think what it is, it isn't just a consistent type of album. There's all sorts. And
Yes.
it took some time for people to turn around and say, wow. And now they're saying, oh, I like their album.
Yeah, I mean, I came to it late. I managed to pick up the CD and I thought, oh, this is one I hadn't heard. Picked it up and played it. And I think on the third listen, I was like, this is probably the best album of yours that I really, really like. I mean, it is such it's almost conceptual in the writing, I suppose.
Yeah.
You know, it tells a complete story, but also, like you say, it's got quite a range of different styles within the same album, and you know, it just shows the diversity.
I mean, I think the track I was just trying to think that was "Cry from the Street," which to me is an absolute all-time favorite. You know, I just remember doing it and thinking, "Wow, it's got everything I wanted on it." And we were once again using a few different sounds, which I've always liked to do, which started with us with the Plague. You know, it was good to come back with it. I mean, that was the difference. And the door was opened, as I say, with the internet. And all of a sudden, people were coming on from all over the world and said, well, where the hell have you been? You know, and I said, excuse me, what do you mean, where have we been? Don't you ever want to play Sweden? Don't you ever want to play Japan? Don't you? I said, well, all you got to do is ask us.
Yeah.
We went to Sweden. I think we're Sweden Rock, which celebrates 30 years this year. I mean,
Mm.
it's massive. They've got Iron Maiden, they've got Ghost, they've got Motley Crue this time. We're not doing it because next month we're doing quite a big one in Sweden on a ship
Yeah.
that sails around, and that's we're doing the play. But I think we're the third band in the history of the festival to have played the most times. The most was Motorhead,
Yeah.
second was Saxon, and the third was us. And it was just because when we first went onto the internet and had some access to it, Mike got this message from the festival saying that they asked people at Sweden Rock, they still do it, who would they like to see at the festival? And all of a sudden they wanted Demon, which, wow, it was. And I must tell you a story about that when we went. The week before, yeah, you're going to like this. The week before, we played in Leicester, a place called Halftime Orange.
Right.
It's by the football ground because that's why it would be called Halftime Orange. And the guy rang us up and he said, because we wanted to warm up before we went to Sweden. And he said to Mike, do you fancy coming as a tribute to Demon? and Mike says, well, we are Demon. He says, yeah, but you get more people in because we have all we have all tributes in here. And I had to laugh. I found it astounding. Anyway, we did it. I mean, there wasn't a great deal of people in. And a week later, we're there in front of 10,000 people for the first time in Sweden. Absolutely walking around doing interviews. It was just amazing.
Yeah.
Different than the Halftime Orange. So and I walked on at Sweden. I mean, they probably didn't. I was saying, I said, good evening. We're not a tribute band. But that was the start of a great relationship with them. And it opened all the territories back up where we had sold some records and not been so much. So,
Yeah. Okay, so walk me through what happened after Spaced Out Monkey. What came next?
After Spaced Out Monkey, we did album called Better the Devil You Know, which we have remixed a few years ago again.
Okay.
I mean, we've always done one or two tracks off it. I mean, it was one of those. It was a good album. I mean, we needed to get back into the stride of making albums. It was received well. And then the following album, which is quite a good seller, we tried an album called Unbroken.
Yeah.
Which really went well in Germany in places. I think we nearly charted it in their territory. But it's always been a consistent album. And then we did, what was the last album there? Cemetery Junction.
Yeah.
Which was the last album we did. And actually at the moment, we've just been in the studio, it's first album in about 5 years, which should be out at the end of the year. And we just put the drums down. We actually went into Magnum's studio in Wolverhampton.
Yeah.
Because our drummer likes the sound there, he's worked there. So we put 13 drum tracks down, and we're sort of now in the middle. I mean, we came up with about 25, 30 songs, when COVID came.
Yeah.
And so we thought, well, let's do an album. Let's have some spare material, and things have been reissued and remastered, and have gone very well. So we thought we'll do another album. So basically, that's where we're up to. And also, there came a game out a few years ago, which was quite a big an online game about Demon, and that is very, very well done. And we actually went to a convention in Malta, where all the sort of gaming people, that was the centre. It's about just before COVID. And I had to dress up with all the old gowns and makeup and all a lot and just wander around this place. And I tell you what, it was amazing because most of the gamers there had seen our game. It did quite well. So it was the other way around. All these people worth loads of money wanted a photo with me. And it was just absolutely, we've been there a couple of times, but it was there, all the world people the
Mm.
gamers, you know, extraordinary amounts of money they got. They've got big offices on the rocks and
Yeah.
at Malta. And in fact, the guy who did it for us, we knew very well, Michael Iverson. He once owned Sweden Rock. 10 years ago, he sold up and got into this. And we got a call one day, and there's been videos with everybody. And we were one of them. There's been sort of Chrissy's sister did one, Candlemass did one, Guns N' Roses have done one, Ozzy's done one, Saxon's done one, and Demon have done one. And I mean, I love the Demon one. If you ever go on and have a look at the game, because people play it, obviously they pay, and all they can select various tracks. And we wrote a track for it and did a video which is on YouTube for it. So just another thing that in the last 20 years, a huge change around from some dark days. But we always continue to make albums. I think that was, you know, we're very lucky to have Mike with us, Mike Stone, manager, knew how to run a record company. So we've got our own called Spaced Out Monkey. The tracks are recorded on ours. And I think in that way we managed to survive. And there's a like cult following with Demon, you know. I mean, the great thing is wherever we go in the world, somebody knows Don't Break the Circle, Night of the Demon, or Remembrance Day, or and it's fabulous, you know. It's so basically it's always been worth to keep doing it, and that's what we're doing now as long as we can.
I've with a prospect of an album, are there tentative dates for touring as well, or do you think that will happen after the album?
Yeah, I think so, because I mean, we did quite a few dates last year, because we should have been in Japan. Once again, it's quite crazy with that, because we meant to go to Japan, God knows how many times. So just before COVID, we signed a deal to go and to reissue all the first 8 albums with the company.
Okay.
So everything was set, but apparently COVID came. And it's only been late on last year, because I've got friends who go to Japan, that they're starting having entertainers back into Japan.
Okay.
So hopefully that's going to materialize later this year. But the one thing they did, which was it just shows how the business is. They asked us, can we reissue the first 8? And we said, yeah, okay. Did this deal with them. They then sent us a CD. I haven't got a spare one, else I'd send it you. I've got one for myself. They sent a CD of the first 8 albums in in fact, I've got it in the other room there, I could show it. And it's the Japanese. Let me just stay there, I'll show it you.
Okay, cool.
Oh, there, you can see me.
Yeah, I can see you.
They sent this.
Right, okay.
In a box, it's Japanese special.
Yeah.
For the first 8 albums. And they sent me a mic, I think 25 of them.
Right.
And so we obviously, I said to him, what do we do with them? I says, you can buy the albums, the first 8 albums, you know, about a £5 each anywhere. And he said, well, I'll have a look on the internet. And the Japanese have been selling them for £125.
Wow.
And because they're a limited Japanese thing, when you open it's a little bit special and all, we put the remaining 25 on the internet at £125. In a fortnight, they'd gone.
No way.
And it just shows things, you know. It's like I was quite amazed with that. And I said to Mike, can't you get any more? But I mean, it just shows, you know, people collecting things. It's especially little, you know, Japanese stuff and that. And but anyway, just going back, we had a lot of gigs in when COVID came.
Yeah.
So last year, I mean, we did play quite extensively. And as I say, this year we're trying to keep the next few months other than the boat trip. And I think there's some later in the year, so we can actually do the album.
Right.
So And then once it's done, I mean, we'll definitely get out there and pick up on perhaps a lot of places that we are only just coming back since COVID. We'll definitely put a tour together.
Brilliant. Well, I'm going to leave you there. Thank you very much for your time, sir. It's
Been a
been
pleasure.
it's been a pleasure on my end. I mean, I'm a bit of a fanboy, I've got to say. I'm sorry about that. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And anytime, just give us a call anytime. It's always like to chat about it, and it's and great. By the way, I don't know where you're based.
I'm based in the middle of nowhere, which is Devon.
Oh, you're in a nice place in the country, aren't you, Devon? Wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, I
I
am
didn't want
literally
to
in the
come
middle
away
of
with that
nowhere.
asking you where are you, but so how's the show go?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's something I never thought I'd actually do. I used to be a dairy farmer, of all
Right.
things.
I was going to ask
And
what your history is in the.
yeah, and basically, I couldn't make dairy farming work for my family,
Right.
basically. And in the end of the day, I had to walk away from it, and I was just working here and there for other people, and I just on the internet, somebody said, "Oh, anybody fancy writing reviews?" And I started writing. I said, "Yeah, I'll do it for a laugh. We're going to a gig tonight. I'll do you a review." And 3-4 years later, here I am. I've got my own website, writing reviews for myself. I do a radio show 5 mornings a week on Hard Rock Hale Radio, and I've got my own YouTube channel where I interview legends like yourself.
Brilliant.
So it's
Yeah, I didn't want to go without me asking, because that was the first question. But with me keep messing stuff up, I was forgetting it. But I wondered wonder where you're from. But I mean, hopefully when we've got the album out, we'll get another interview and anything else you want to ask. And
yeah,
sure,
I'd love that. Thank you very much.
pleasure.
Yeah, I'm just now trawling the internet for the CDs that I haven't got. The mistake I made of selling all my vinyl was that I couldn't get all the damn CDs.
Yeah.
But never mind. I'm sure it'll happen. When is The Plague out? It's out now, isn't it?
The Plague it's out on it's download at the moment. There's
Yeah.
gonna be it's been out about 4 weeks.
Mm,
And there's gonna be on CD quite
good.
shortly.
Good. Right.
And then we're gonna put some vinyl out because
Mm,
obviously it's that'll be the final stage. But there's like we were saying earlier, there's a lot of interest in the album. There
yeah.
always is in the first two, of course, but Blake seems to. I don't know if it's the times we live in or what, but
Yeah, it seems to be an evergreen, doesn't it? It just seems to be
yeah,
relevant at every
yeah.
time. Mm. Are you planning on re-releasing and remixing all the albums, or?
Well, I mean, quite a few of them. I suppose the next one in line, if we do, I don't know if we will, is pretty standard. I mean, it's
Mm,
because the first three have been done,
yeah.
received very well, and so I think we're going to have a look at it once we've got this. Obviously we're doing the new album,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the Plague we're concentrating on. So I think we'll
Mm,
have a look at we'll have a look at some of the other albums, but most of the ones I think that we wanted to remix
mm.
have probably done because they're from the early days.
Yeah. Yeah. Technology's moved that far
The
forward, isn't it?
Unexpected Guest was even though it's done very well over the years. I don't know if you've heard the remix of that. I mean,
No, I've only
got
got older version of that, but yeah.
yeah. I mean, it was cut very much like at the time. American bands had this radio type of very thin middle for the radio,
Yeah.
and there's not much bottom end, and it's all zooped down the middle. And
Yeah.
that's how ours was done, even though it did well. But now we brought out the bottom end, keys on it, and it's much warmer. So
Mm,
that's been well received. And but anyway, I think as we go along, we'll have a look and see
okay.
what's what.
Brilliant. Well, I won't hold you up anymore. Thank you for doing this, sir. Hopefully, I don't know if I'm going to break it into two halves or I'm going to do a complete one, then maybe break it into two halves or something like that. I don't know, but I'm going to have a think about it while I'm out and about today, and I'll tag yourself or the band in on Facebook when I share it around,
Oh,
and
brilliant.
I'll drop you any WhatsApp with a link as well, so you can.
Lovely. Thanks, Dave.
View it.
And thanks for your time. It's,
Oh,
you know,
no problem at all. I mean, honestly,
if it
this.
wasn't for you and everybody else, I wouldn't be sitting here talking about what we've got on.
Oh yeah. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Be in touch.